Yes, good morning, everybody. Hello to the online group. And I must say I'm touched and moved by speaking here. I haven't been speaking here for at least 7 years after 2018, when our program on Poland concluded in St. Antony's College. So I'm really delighted to be here, and thank you so much for bringing us here. I was thinking how this global comparison that we attempt to prepare here, how it starts. And I think it starts in, or our thinking about it basically starts in 2022 in Taipei. When in March, there is a very peculiar demonstration in the center of Taipei. You have a sunny day, everything looks well, and then in the middle of the town, of the city, you have a group of people who are laying on the ground, and they are they look like victims of the war. There are some loudspeakers with sounds of coming planes and falling bombs, and the slogans they bring with say "Stop Russia" or "Freedom for Ukraine." And it was extremely moving for us when we read about this demonstration and when we saw the pictures, because we thought, this is so puzzling, how the experience of being afraid that your country is going to cease to exist, how it travels. And that it doesn't travel only throughout Eastern Europe. You would say, well, this is very natural for an Eastern European to think, oh, this is just my experience. And in fact, I do believe, and we have argued in some of our publications, that the reasons for Poles being so eager to bring in the Ukrainian refugees in 2022 was simply that they saw themselves in the incoming mothers with children. They just saw their own history. But the Taiwanese, showing their deep empathy and their Mitgefühl, their feeling with the victims of Ukraine during the Russian attack on the full scale attack, we considered it something that really triggered us to think more internationally, or to start really working on this comparative framework that we are telling you about. So let me just say that what I'm going to present here is a framework that was articulated in a book project that we have created about post-traumatic sovereignty on a global international framework. So whilst I'm speaking, I might refer to a book that we are planning to write. We can talk about the book a little bit later, because the prospects are not so bad. But we will be very interested in all your comments, because this is still a work in progress. So I spoke a little bit about this shift from our regional focus to the global focus. And I also should mention that it's a shift from our thinking of international politics or international global dynamics as happening through the decisions of large countries, neo-empires, etc., to small countries. Because we actually argue that it's not that the countries that we are mentioning, Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel, they are not only subjects of global play, but they are actually also active players in what is happening. So in the book, we would like to ask several questions that are really keeping us at night. Like, for example, why this experience, the experience of either recurring threat of losing sovereignty or an ongoing persistent threat of losing sovereignty, Why does it play such an important role in those countries' political behavior? But also we would like to ask why this experience plays an important role for the global security and for the international order. In fact, for the imagination of the global order itself. Also, the questions that interest us are, for example, to what extent threats of sovereignty and their impact on countries' politics may be comparable. So we all know that the countries that we are mentioning today are far from being similar. In fact, you could say that it's very difficult to find more different countries as for geography, politics, history, cultural, etc., etc. But still, we say, okay, yes, that's it. But we do argue that there is this at least one feature that connects those countries, and we would like to compare. So the question is, of course, to what extent they are comparable. Can those experiences be transferred from one to another? Does the Taiwanese demonstration only mean a symbolic articulation of fears, or is it something more? Has something more been transferred here? Last but not least, can the countries learn from each other? Is it possible that they also learn from each other and reshape their policies as they observe how the distant distant country is reacting to global politics? So a little bit perhaps about the background and how we are thinking. Perhaps it should be stated here that when one researches, when one analyzes the defense of a country's independence, this might be quite tricky, especially on the continent. It might be equated with researching on the ideology of nationalism. So independence is very often somehow connected with nationalism. And of course, there are very good reasons for that. At least the 20th century European history gives us good reasons to be cautious, given the obvious examples of Prussia and Nazi Germany. And this, of course, doesn't end the list. But our argument is that we of course can think about defense of a country's independence this way, but we also can create a different frame for understanding. And in this book we're planning, we want to examine those three countries around the globe, along with their regional environment, and explain how the citizens of those countries are constantly forced to think not about not allowing their nation states to be erased from the world map. Now, those disappearances or possible disappearances are, of course, very different from each other. And that's why the questions I posed at the beginning. So, for example, the disappearance might have happened almost 2,000 years ago, like in the case of Israel. But also, it might be something that haven't happened yet, like in the case of Taiwan. Or it might happen as in the Eastern European example, it might happen in a way that it happened before, but now Ukraine is defending itself currently. So the country has not been erased from the map yet. So as you can see, very different experiences here. For all those experiences, we use the post-traumatic sovereignty as one sensitizing concept. So sensitizing in a way that it provides a framework and interpretation, but still prone to questions and to reshaping. So as Jarosław was saying, the notion of sovereignty is quite a different thing in all those places. It's quite different from traditional Western political thought, where sovereignty would be probably most easily defined in Hobbesian terms, so as a guarantee of internal stability. In those countries, the societies, the inhabitants of the triangle of troubled sovereignty, on the contrary, sovereignty is always connected with a cyclical loss or the constant threat to territory and statehood and independence. And what is important, it's not only threats on paper, it's not only threat on where your borders are, but actually the threat is often accompanied with episodes of violence, and this translates into collective trauma. So without these episodes of violence, at least in as a possibility, there wouldn't be the trauma. So here, of course, a lot of examples might be given. When it comes to Ukraine, probably the fastest association are the pictures of the people slaughtered in Bucha. When it comes to Israel, very lately, the October 7th Hamas attacks and the discussion, the testimonies of witnesses, etc., etc. In the case of Taiwan, for example, military exercises of the People's Republic of China and launching missiles across the Taiwan Strait are reminders of what loss of sovereignty could mean, not only for the country, but for every individual. Now, I wouldn't like to talk too long because I'm really interested in what we are going to hear. So let me just concentrate perhaps on four most important features and at the same time contributions of this framework for interpretation. So first, what we would like to do, we would like to present an evidence-based account of how recurring loss of statehood shapes the politics of states situated in the hottest global crisis. As Jaroslav said, those are the places that are usually mentioned when it comes to where the Third World War could actually start. So we would like to situate the research on trauma and sovereignty in the context of political dynamics. So we would like, in other words, to situate not only thinking about the collective, but actually bridging the individual and collective and thinking about political dynamics. So this is what we want to do. Second, there is, of course, the whole question of what is trauma. What actually is trauma? What are we referring to, apart from the fact that we speak about the recurring or possible threat of episodes of violence? Well, we basically, our definition of trauma is very much based on Bassam van der Kolk's research, and his definition that trauma is not actually the past event itself, it's the rhetoric, it's the argument, it's the narration that is created about this event in the present or in a given historical epoch that you are researching on. So there is a very strong emotional, but also a very strong narrative aspect to what trauma is. So this is point number one. Point number two, obviously, there is a large discussion whether trauma is something individual or something collective. But I do believe, or we do believe, there is enough research right now which shows that what is individual in this case also translates into what is collective. Like, for example, but this is only one example, the wonderful book, The Empire of Trauma by Didier Fassin and Rechtman. So this is this translation. And the next translation is, of course, how come sovereignty is connected with trauma, right? I mean, how is it possible? Usually, in the research on collective trauma, you have various events that can cause collective traumas, like, for example, genocide, war, but also all kinds of natural catastrophes or accidents. Those are all events that are connected with research on trauma. So what is new here? We want to relate collective trauma with this new particular experience, which is the experience of losing your statehood and losing sovereignty. This, by the way, allows us perhaps in the future not only to think about the trio of states that have been mentioned in this panel, but actually to think about other states, like, for example, South Korea or Ethiopia or Namibia. So all the countries that have had similar experiences, those experiences might be translated into the same post-traumatic sovereignty disorder or neurosis, as you want, Jaroslav. Okay, so third, what we would like to do by this, we would like to contribute to a deeper understanding of the dynamics of global order regarding statehood and perceived or factual zones of interest. So we would like to situate the post-traumatic experience as a core factor in understanding politics. So it's a comprehensive comparative analysis with other factors like geography, economy, climate change, migration, and you name it. Also, you have been already mentioned, we want to step back for a moment from the perspective of empires and think about what is actually statistically more common. From the statistical point of view, troubled sovereignty is a much more common experience. So we would like to understand that. Finally, last but not least, surely, this is also a debate about the resilience of democracy. So many of those countries use a democratic card in order to convince empires of their choice that they should not be wiped off the map, that they should be good allies, that should be treated and seen as good allies. And indeed, what East Central Europeans were doing after 1989 was exactly that. Listen, you have to protect us because we are building good democracies here. So this is also a question about the resilience of democracy. And of course, there is a growing and huge literature on democratic institutions and democratic habits. What we would like to add to this discussion is that also geopolitics can create an environment that causes democratic resilience to a neighboring aggressive state. Thank you very much. We are very eager to hear your questions.